Frost kills. The biting cold of winter spells doom for our summer favorites. But where one endeavor ends, new opportunities arise. Enter the cold weather crops. And not just plants that can take the cool, varieties that actually perform and taste better when the mercury dips. So today, I've compiled 10 such plants that, if the conditions are right, could provide you with some winter bounty like no other. It's a well-known fact that many of our favorite plants actually do better outside the parameters of that intense summer heat. Crops such as arugula, cilantro, spinach, bok choy, peas, radishes, and on and on and on. Without the rigors of heat and drought, they're allowed to grow and flourish with lush vigor and even better taste. But cool weather tolerance and cold temperature hardiness are two different things. That ever-important temperature inflection point of freezing actually takes all of those plants out of the winter mix for me. It's a pretty rare subset of backyard crops that can look your fall frost date in the face and say, I got this. These plants, for whatever reason, look at old man winter and think to themselves, this is it? What else you got? And they do this by sending sugars and carbohydrates to their outer extremes as an effective natural antifreeze. And by doing this, these winter wonders actually get better as the temperatures get cooler. Today, I've compiled 10 of my favorite crops that can take below freezing, so let's get into it. First up, we have cabbage. Cabbage is a cultivar in that large, extensive family known as brassicas. Now, brassicas are going to be featured extensively on this list, but for the purpose of this video, we're going to treat them all as separate plants. Now, back to our cabbage. This cultivar is bred for its tightly wound whorls of leaves that can be eaten raw or cooked. They come in a variety of sizes and colors, but I like the purple ones like this one the best. You do need to plant these guys when the temperatures are still above 60 degrees Fahrenheit, but as mature heads, they'll take the frost like a champ, becoming sweeter and sweeter, especially when eaten raw. Next up, we have lettuce. This can be a bit of a tricky one, where not all varieties are suited for the cold. Lettuce is an annual plant in the daisy family, almost always eaten raw. There are 4 types of lettuce: romaine, leaf, butterhead, and iceberg. For cold tolerance, romaine and butterhead seem to be the best. And within those 2 categories, certain specialized varieties are better in the cold than others. Here I've got some Paris Island Co. romaine type starter plants. They're about a month old, and I'm going to plant them later on today if the ground doesn't freeze. At number 3 on the list, we have collards. Just think of these guys as loose leaf cabbages. Another brassica variety, collards are fairly quick growing and tolerant of a wide range of soils. For the juiciest leaves, try to keep the exposure down to a minimum. I find that wind really affects these guys. But in terms of cold tolerance, those first couple of frosts really set the flavor for them. Get these guys in the ground about a month before your first fall frost for the most reliable results. Collards really are underrated. Give them a try. 2 of the more famous brassicas we have are broccoli and cauliflower. These modified cabbages are bred and grown solely for their flowering structures, and thus require a bit more time and care than, say, the collards. Try to start your broccoli and cauliflower seeds 8 weeks before your first fall frost. And then you want to get them in the ground about 4 to 5 weeks later. If your winters are harsh and come on quickly, you may have to start these guys a little bit earlier. You want to time that harvest before the really bad weather hits. You gotta remember, flowering structures are a little bit more susceptible to cold and exposure than leaves are. At number 6, we have our first root crop, and that's beets. Beetroots are the bulbous taproots that are most sought after, although the whole plant is edible. Almost always grown from seeds, plant your beets in rows a foot apart when the soil is still above 55 degrees Fahrenheit or 12 degrees Celsius. Initial root radical formation is severely stunted at colder temperatures, so these guys need to be established before the cold hits. Thin your beets when they're 2 to 4 inches tall, and harvest the plants at any time. You can take a few leaves here or there without harming the taproot or the plant, so beets really are one of those crops that are 2 for the price of 1. And on the same subject of beets, we have chard, also known as Swiss chard. And by the same subject, I mean they're actually the same species, Beta vulgaris. This leafy green variety of the beet plant has actually been cultivated for centuries, and in my opinion, it just doesn't get the credit or recognition that it deserves. Although it's just as hardy as beets, chard is extremely perishable, going limp only hours after harvest. What this tells me is, it's useless to buy, but something we should be growing ourselves. Harvest the young leaves raw for salads and steam the larger ones that are slightly tougher. If I were to make a category of super crops to grow in my garden, chard would definitely be on that list. All right, back to our roots. In the number 8 spot, we have carrots. Carrots become super sweet when it gets cold out, and pretty much all varieties are suitable for winter. The catch is, however, carrots need heat to germinate. Optimal germination temperatures for carrots is 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Obviously, for winter carrots, this is going to be impossible. But we still need to get the seeds into the ground when the soil is above 45 degrees Fahrenheit or 7 degrees Celsius. What this means is you need to look at your temperatures around 3 to 4 or even 5 weeks before your first fall frost. For a plant that can really handle the cold, the seeds cannot. They'll simply just lay there in the ground, dormant, waiting for warmer temperatures. So get them into the ground well before that first fall frost, let them germinate, and you'll be golden. At number 9, we have the only allium on the list, green onions. Of course, garlic is planted in the fall and overwintered in the ground, but we don't harvest it till next summer, so it's not a true winter crop. But our green onions, also known as scallions, can take not only the cold, but also exposure. Nothing seems to hold them back, and they don't need much space to grow. When you just need that onion kick, and your bulb onions have long since packed it in, look at growing some winter green onions. They never disappoint. And finally, we have the big daddy of winter, kale. Again, part of the brassica family, this esteemed member was built for winter. Any zone 7 or above, kale should survive year-round. Temperatures down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 23 degrees Celsius will find kale still hanging on. A true winter warrior. Like most of the plants on this list, kale gets even sweeter as the temperatures dip, with the tender inner leaves rivaling even that of the best lettuces. Red Russian and Dinosaur are my favorite varieties, but there's a zillion to choose from. You can grow them from direct seeding, but I always choose starter plants or plugs. It's so much easier, and it gets them going that much faster. If you have trouble growing kale in the heat of summer, don't give up. Simply switch the seasons. Plant your favorite varieties in the fall for a winter harvest, and get that epic kale crop that you may have missed out on. Winter gardening is about braving the elements and persevering through a time of year when many have packed it in. Frozen ground, bitter temperatures, and a shrinking list of viable crop options are hard to ignore. But these 10 plants don't seem to care about any of that. If timed right, they have the ability to withstand that furious frost and will allow us to keep our gardening hats on for just a little bit longer. Hey, thanks so much for watching, guys. I appreciate the support more than you know. And if you're getting value from these videos, please like and share them to spread the word and help your fellow gardener to grow better.